In this video, we'll show the OpenAPI specification Markdown support in Layer 7 API Developer Portal. The OpenAPI specification defines a RESTful API interface in JSON or YAML format. It allows both humans and computers to discover and understand the capabilities of the service without access to the REST API source code. OpenAPI supports Markdown for rich text representation for the description field in the specification. Markdown enables support for rich document and custom content, such as images and tables. Layer 7 API Developer Portal version 4.4 supports creating an API specification document using an OpenAPI specification that includes Markdown. So let's see some examples of Markdown. First, we have a URL link. You can easily test the Markdown with the Swagger editor. In this demo, the URL link Markdown is inserted into the OpenAPI specification. You can see that the link appears in the document. Next, let's see what happens when you add an image in the description of the OpenAPI specification. In this demo, we add the image Markdown, and you can see that the image appears after inserting the Markdown. Next, let's look at a table. Markdown supports raw HTML. This means that you can directly enter HTML into the description field of the specification. Using raw HTML, we can add a table. In this demo, we insert the HTML tag into the OpenAPI specification for a table. You can see that the table is inserted by specifying the appropriate HTML content. What other Markdown types are supported? The common Mark dialect is supported by OpenAPI. See the Common Mark website for more details. If you're not familiar with OpenAPI, you can also see the OpenAPI website for more information. Let's take a look at how an OpenAPI specification, which includes Markdown language for custom content, can be imported into the API portal. The API portal supports OpenAPI in JSON format. So if you have a YAML specification, you need to convert it into JSON. The Swagger editor can perform this conversion for you. When you publish an API on the portal, you can select the OpenAPI specification JSON file in the API details. If the API is successfully published, you can see the API spec document that is automatically created by the OpenAPI specification JSON file. Rich content in Markdown is also added in the API spec document. So let's take a look at the demo. First, we'll use the conversion capability of the Swagger editor to convert a YAML specification into JSON and download it. Now we'll publish a new API on the portal by going to APIs and selecting Add API. For API definition, select OpenAPI specification JSON file. For API details, specify the API name, version, location of the backend API, and the API EULA. For proxy configuration, specify the API URI that is published on the API gateway for the proxy URL. The API can be accessed at this URI on the API gateway. For policy template, select the policy template that is applied to the API published on the API gateway. For spec authentication, select the authentication method used for the API specification page on the portal. In this demo, we'll use none. For API visibility for organizations, select the API visibility type. In this demo, we'll select public, which means the API is visible for all organizations in the API portal. For API permission, select open or restricted. In this demo, we'll select open, which means the API is editable for all users who have permission to edit an API. After the API is successfully published on the portal, select the Spec tab. In this tab, you can see the API specification page that was created by the OpenAPI specification JSON file. And also notice that the URL link, image, and table, which was specified using Markdown, is also available in the document. So we've just shown that by using Markdown, you can easily create an API spec document with rich documentation and custom contents such as images and tables.